Now
this
you have
session.
now you have 24 minutes.
24 minutes. Okay, it's a good time. Yeah.
So Juan, thank you very much for being part of the symposium. And of course, you came in. I mean, it's good that you said you wanted to participate, although it was last minute. But thank you very much. So what you have to do, Juan, is you have to tell us
Well,
about yourself. Yeah.
yes, I tell you. Well, but I thank you for the invitation. We already had talked about a year ago, and suddenly I don't know how we get speaking again. And I'm grateful for this proposal. I think it's a very interesting initiative you're leading. And I present myself. Look, I'm a psychologist. My practice as a psychologist is as a psychoanalyst and also as a mediator, negotiator, and as a coach. And I've been teaching clinical psychology at the Buenos Aires University for over 30 years. And I tell you, we have numbers as in India. We had 25,000 students in 30 years. It's quite a lot, you see. And a big staff. We're about 100 teaching. I was a professor. And I also was director of a master in mediation and negotiation, which we developed with IUTB, Cote Bosch University Institute from Switzerland, which now has merged with Geneva University. But the program finished a pair of years ago. And I want to just to say it, we had 250 students and 130 graduated. So we have an average of 50% of graduates with a final thesis, which is a good standard for a university. And most of the most important mediators and judicial employees working in mediation and judges and even Superior Court judges from all Latin America. There was a colleague from Brazil. Well, one of our students was a minister of the Superior Court in Brasilia, you know? And and we had lots of agreements with a lot of institutions. So I got really involved in this, and I got into mediation because I thought that psychoanalysis and psychotherapy had a limit. I mean, people had to change also some things in their lives, and sometimes they had to change things quickly in their lives if they wanted to keep not getting mad. So I got about 25 years ago, I got into mediation. I found it a most beautiful field of work, and I really got involved. But I kept on being professor at the university in psychology and practical psychology. So I will give another point of view. Besides, I would like to present myself. I would like to share. Well, I can't find it now.
Before you share, let me just put up what we are doing, because it's a new session. So let me just put this up.
Yes.
This is what we are discussing: language and mediation. And of course, Juan has already told us about himself. So this goes up till tomorrow. And Juan, please come for the last session also. There's learnings and key takeaways and Kenneth Cloke session. So that's tomorrow. So that's one thing. The other thing I just want to quickly say that I don't know, I will ask you at some stage, what have you ever seen what's the stuff that I do? But to find information about the various, almost more than 500 videos, you can go to mediatorvikram.com. You'll get an idea of the links there and the various events and all. It's all there. World Mediation Circle is the focus area now. We'll look at Argentina Mediation Circle. I won't take more of your time. One, please, if you want to share a presentation, totally yours.
I can do it. Yeah. You know, I've been hearing some of the symposiums, and I found them more inspiring. And specifically, one who's been working on language and mediation, who's Herman Schaeffer from Netherlands.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting, and he coming from law as a law graduate and advocate, and me coming from psychology, I thought we merged in a few ideas, which I will stress because I think they're very important. And I thought, well, he said it all. Well, maybe not all. I got something to say too. I just want to tell you that I printed a book. I'll share the image. If I can share, how can I share?
Just press share screen and you're up. That's it.
But now I'm out of the symposium again. God sake. Sorry.
What you do is, yes, open that file first and then
No.
go to share screen and then you'll see that and just click on that.
I opened the image, but I cannot go back to the image we are sharing. The voice is working well. I cannot put sharing. Sorry.
While you're talking to us, just email it to me. I'll open it. Or you can put the image here also in the chat. You can put it in the chat. I can open it in the chat.
I got it back again. Yeah, that's it. I'm sharing the screen. This screen, if you're seeing it, it just says it's full screen. But I wrote a book trying to get together mediation, negotiation, and psychotherapy in psychology. And this book is called The Tenacity of Hate and the Feast of Life, which is a proposal. You go from one side to the other side. And the idea is about negotiation and psychoanalysis for a possible living together. That's what I wanted to share, but I have to come back.
Yeah, you can just put it in the chat also. If you can just put the file in the chat, I'll open it here. But I think, Juan, we should do a symposium on that. Mediation, psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, and all, and mediation.
So thank you, Herman.
I leave the images.
Thank you very much, Herman, for being part of it.
This is Herman's session you opened there. I can hear Herman now.
You have to do that later sometime whenever you have time.
Yeah, it's just still open in the air now. I realize that, but I really want to like to talk about you further.
Juan, you opened Herman's session on your computer. We are listening to Herman now.
The only thing is that obviously you've been on a.
I'm inside
you opened that. Yeah, you opened the session on your computer, Herman's session. So that's playing there. I can hear that.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
And you see me too?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, that's it. That's what I want. Look, it's good. Herman, you are here. Maybe we'll be able to not to discuss, but to make.
He's not here. He's not here. You opened it on your YouTube.
Other shows.
I thought.
So people can
I thought it was okay. I follow. I go on.
You have to tell us a little bit about yourself.
You'll have to switch that off. You'll have to just put that off. We can hear that video playing.
Only issue that comes up with the first session is that people might think this is the direction to take, and a lot of messages are got.
You'll have to put that off. Yeah, YouTube is playing there. Yeah.
Anyway,
it's still playing.
Good.
Please, Herman.
Okay, go on. I go on.
It's still playing. Your video's playing on YouTube on your computer. You have to go to YouTube on your computer and switch that off. You have to stop that.
Vikram,
language.
What you're doing, Juan, what you've done is you've opened that video on YouTube on your computer. So it's playing on your computer. So you are listening to that video and you're also listening to me. Both are happening together.
I won't share images then. So that's the best thing I can do.
Perfect.
Of this image. Let's leave the image because if you get out and it's apparently I'm off suddenly. So are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I follow without seeing myself any image. Okay, now I get it. Look. Well, besides, I write poetry, publish a few books. I write essays. Now I'm publishing a book on the chronicle of the ailing and the difficulties during pandemic, whereas many of them were articles published in newspapers. And I have to say it because it's one of my preferred activities. I sing in a choir, and we give annual symphonic choral concerts. 80 singers, 30 musicians, and Vivaldi, Mozart, Schubert. I love that music. But I get to a place where I want to go, that we're getting into a situation where conflict is building up all the time, and really very difficult conflicts. And I used an image of the four riders of apocalypse: death, epidemics, and other and other issues, but there was a fourth rider who's called the hope. So with all of that's going wrong, I bet, and we bet as mediators, and you, Vikram, as a peacemaker, we're looking forward to hope that things can be better than what they are in this moment. And there are all sorts of conflicts. Micro conflicts are a building where people are just disrespecting themselves and being violent between them and having meetings which are violent and unconducive anywhere. There is a need of a mediator, but then there are conflicts which are all very inclusive of many parts of the world and can become very violent, as is happening permanently in the world. And I think, again, for that, the mediators and conflict resolvers can be most useful. And the question is, how? No? And I think the only way is speaking. And there, I found, working with Steve Littlejohn and Kathy Dominici, they're writing on conflict and culture from the New Mexico University. I worked with them, and something they did which was incredible. It was organized by the White House, and it was a multi-party negotiation. There were about 300, 400 people from all sectors of society, but representing societies by themselves. I mean, lawmakers, digital companies, but all people who had opinions to decide. And they wanted to work on the digital divide of the colleges and universities of the Indian reservations and native reservations, and was so efficient because in 3 days a plan was built up and has been developed and really happened. So those are the things which I love about mediation. You can work things through conversation, and these guys, especially Steve Littlejohn, they organized it, they led it. He's used the word ongoing conversation. That's the word I love, an ongoing conversation. That's in mediation, that's in coaching, that's in negotiation and conflict resolution. And so the importance of how you work with speech, and sometimes people attribute to the others badness, evil, being evil more than badness, being perverse and being nuts, being crazy. That's the attribution to the enemy, the person one confronts that doesn't understand our feelings and our thoughts. Well, you know, the mediation is trying to understand not only what the other person is thinking, needing, and what's the story of the conflict for the other person, but also understanding the one which is working for you. But how can you get to that point? It's not only it's not only neutrality, it's not only confidence, it's not only applying the techniques of the I speeches and all the different techniques we have, even the art of making questions, and there are books about how to ask things. Okay, that's useful, but it's not a technique. Here it's a question if people can hear the other person, and it's a real condition. And as Herman, I will talk about Herman now, it's not psychotherapy, but it is therapeutical because people get cured of their madness or their bad feelings, of their envy, of their resentment, and can start building a relation with the person with whom they most have a conflict. We usually are associates, people working in an organization and a company, and the family and neighbors. You have conflicts with the people who are near to you. The rest you don't care about, but that's a question you have to care about and take responsibility about the other people. So, and you have to get into a field which Schaeffer was speaking about. You have to explore the imaginative fantasies and mental constructions with which people live. Some of them they know, and the most important they don't know. So when somebody speaks, he's always saying something else. So getting attention to the word slips, to the ideas that suddenly are shared without wanting. What one says, well, you know it. Politicians, Trump was an example, but there are many, my president also, they say things which you say, they are nuts. They're telling the truth, but without knowing that they're saying it because they're lying. So you get to know that they're lying, which is the truth. Well, That is stories that come up, but then you have also to explore the history of a relation. I've been working with two sisters and with very interesting success because they had to divide a succession of properties of fields, productive fields, how do you say it in English language, fields, and agricultural activity, and they had to divide, and they couldn't. But they women, mature women, they have small children, but then they have a conflict. They couldn't look at each other, and there was a sort of interminable situation. And then he came up to a story when they were small. We had to go to that. The people bring it up. They were small. The mother was with them, polishing with the polishing machine of a floor. They were chatting with her. One was 4, the other one was 6, and suddenly the mother got an electric shock and died just there in front of them. They looked at each other. I constructed that. But then after that, they never could look at each other's eyes again for 40 years. So we had to go through that to see that they couldn't separate. They were united in that situation, horrible situation. They couldn't separate and split properties. Now, I could tell them the most intelligent way how to do it, but it has no importance. You have to solve the conflicting situation, and then you can say, find out the best ways to solve it. So I found a formula. 95% is working on people's perceptions and feelings and thoughts, and 5% is negotiation, which it goes very quick up and finds fantastic solutions where you can do it this way or the other way, on a third way, and all fit together if people think that it's good for them and for the other party. That's it. That's the objective of mediation. So I found so interesting what Herman Schaeffer said. Even more, I worked with the Justice Ministry of Netherlands and the Federation of Netherlands Mediators, respect of a law which a friend of mine told me it's not a good law, so help me. But I was a specialist at that time, 8-10 years ago. I was a specialist in mediation laws. I wrote some laws, and people ask me, are you an advocate? I'm not. I'm a person who can learn from any field and have a reasonable approach and accepting opinions of many others. And so I told him, look, if you're going to make a bad law was a bad law, because at least we have a law in mediation, it's not a good practice, because then you won't change laws so quickly in their interest in building up, which you cannot stop. So beware, don't do it. Maybe in the future comes an opportunity to have a better law, which this is a characteristic I prefer. I don't like bad agreements. I denounce them. People accept bad agreements, say, well, what, you're missing something. You didn't think about something. It cannot be this sort of, and I give an opinion. I do. There's also a way of being neutral, because you're compensating powers and confusion and unconscious being culpable. What's the word in English? Feeling guilty. Guilt is a thing which has to be worked very seriously in mediation, and you don't have to be a psychologist to, as hearing Herman and other mediators who are lawyers and judges. They are brilliant as mediators. So I mean, I think it's a profession many people can take part, and the point of view from different professions and activities are a good thing to share different points of view in a field which is multidisciplinary. And it's great. I love it because of that. But then they didn't accept the law finally, and I don't know now how they said. I have to ask my friend Yannick Dirks, who was working with that, and called me up. So I think that things have to be done well, and agreements have to be good agreements. And one, as a mediator, has to help them and ask the questions. What is? I asked once a question. There was a succession. A lady, her husband killed himself. They had 2 children. They were around 20 years old. But then this man had 3 daughters who were older and had themselves children. And the woman was over 65. They had already 5 years conflict with lawyers. The lawyers called me. They were very desperate. They won't ever stop. So this woman didn't want to give anything to the other girls. Why? Well, I don't know ask exactly why. We don't need to know why, but we need to know for what. And for what was that if she finished the succession, she would have to give her husband is dead. And we have an expression, what dead people are when they get to, well, in some traditions, they have a white Roman clothing, and one says it doesn't have any pockets. So when you die, you don't have any pockets. So it means your money goes somewhere, and if it doesn't go anywhere, if the succession is not finished, and then you don't let him go free. And people need to rest in peace, and to rest in peace is finishing all that belonged and what had to do with the person who died. You have to solve it here. So this woman didn't want to solve it. Why? She wanted to keep the guy alive, imaginary process, by not finishing the succession. So one day I asked her, look, how long have you been going on with this judging, with this process and demands and counter demands and appellations and appeals? And she said, well, about 5-6 years. And tell me, now, from now on, how long will it take till you finish? Yeah, I think about 5-6 years. And what are you going to do then? That was the question. Suddenly, she found out that she would be about 70, and she would spend another 5 years in this fight. And automatically, from that moment, we finished the agreement. We took just technicalities and had to write it down, but the idea was, let's solve it. And they solved it. So if you don't go to that place, what are good ideas for an agreement? Nothing. I mean, I'm intelligent to solve people's problems, but my problems, I never solved them just like that by reasoning. There were interests, conflicts, divorces, and you have to think about things, but they're impulsive issues. So then, when one thinks this lady was bad, now, was she purpose? Now, was she crazy? She wasn't. But there was a logic behind that, and you have to find the logic. So that's where I get together with Herman Schaeffer when he says, you have to dig the dust, get your hands dirty, and you have to find, he tells it in a nice way, I like it. It's a metaphor, but it's a good metaphor. It's a poetic metaphor. You have to find the story under the story, always. People talk about something, but it's incomplete. There are other stories underlying which you won't tell or they don't know. You have to build them up with them. And then the use of language, reading between the lines, that's the art. Like I said, that Maimonides, it's a Jewish theorician, a very important, Moshe ben Maimon. He was a very important guy, 12th century. He ended being the doctor of the pharaoh of Egypt. He came from Spain, and he said that the text of the Pentateuch, you cannot get to know everything because the text is in between the lines and the letters. So all the truth cannot be revealed. Is that word? Revealed? Mm-hmm. Known, but then it's forbidden. So one goes to read between the lines. You won't find everything. You don't need it in a mediation. You won't need it in a psychotherapy. But you have to know what is the story. And well, that's what Herman said, was speaking about, and I think it's a good. And if that's what narrative mediators are, I'm a narrative mediator. I didn't know it. And then another image uses. Sorry, Vikram?
Because now it is Helen's time. Now we have to get her in. If she gives you an extension of time, I have no problem. Now it's Helen's time. Helen, what do you want to say, Juan? To Juan?
Thank you. Well, Juan, I was taking notes of what you were saying, because your comments, dig the dust and get your hands dirty, is going to fall very nicely into part of my presentation.
But
and know the story.
Those words are from Schaeffer, eh?
There was a session with Herman Schaeffer from Netherlands. That's the first session of the symposium. He's quoting from there.
Okay, thank you. And so it's nice to see you, Mediator Vikram, and my dad, Mort Lightstone's here. So
Hi,
Dad's going to be quoted in this presentation.
Anyone else in the family coming in? Some cousins or anyone else?
It's possible. I have alerted everybody, just so you know. Could I trouble you to share the screen?
No, what we have to do is we'll have to just ask Juan to just conclude, because we'll have to start your session. Sure. That's a different feed.
Yes. And Helen, if you let me, it's just 2 minutes, at most 3. And I thank you for your consideration. Look, there's another idea of Schaeffer, that is to step outside, and that's a technique used by Gisela Perrin-Klinger from Switzerland, working for the Red Cross with tortured people, to imprison people, to excite people. So her technique was step out of your story and look at your story from outside. So I found that so interesting. But I'll finish. Look, I'm going to say one thing, and I discovered with poetry, and also with psychoanalysis, but with poetry. One thing is what we say, another thing is what is coming from behind. If you give credit to what comes from behind, you discover things in yourself and in other people, which everybody does that, and that is called, look, basically it's called unconscious, not to be Freudian, but it is a Freudian concept, but unconscious produces a quantity of ideas which all come out, but they're formed. So you have to find out what's the configuration. So what is the place of the other person in conflict for you, which moves things, which irritate, which annoy you, get you furious, etc. So if you get to that side, to that part, and you as a mediator help them discover it, that's making magic. And some people call it active hearing. That's the word we're using. Yes, it's active hearing, but with this sense, because if we take active hearing from the Harvard School of Mediation and Negotiation, it's a bit more limited, but that's what I discovered. The ideas coming from the concept of active hearing within your unconscious, and then be able to recover the idea and be able to understand it and be conscious. That is what you teach people to do, and when they do it with you, you can find. I think it's the only way to find a possible agreements, if there is a field where you can, and that you find that's credible. It's not only family mediation. I find that in business mediation. That's more incredible, and so. And that's why I got from the field of psychotherapy to the field of mediation and negotiation. And I've been working also in coaching, but it's the same. Why the CEO does this and thinks this, and what does he think of what the other people are trying and doing and thinking? So when you enrich your point of view, your decisions change completely of quality. And instead of being authoritative and violent, they can be collaborative, there can be comradeship, if that's a word, and things change completely, and it's magic. But that's what we do as mediators. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you very
And-
much, Juan. It was nice of you to
And,
participate.
I found interesting Herman Schaeffer's ideas
Yeah,
and
we'll-
start
we'll-
talking about that.
we'll
And I
talk-
see that Alan was taking them also. But that's a nice symposium. We're
Perfect.
sharing it. Thank you.
On the last day, tomorrow, you can always come in and talk about the session. We have a session at 10 o'clock India time only to talk about this. So thank you very much. I have to get Helen in because we've
Yes.
taken more than her time. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
I excuse myself, Vikram.
thank you, Juan. Thanks a lot for participating.
Juan, I almost feel like you did the presentation for me. So thank you so much.
You're working together.